We scrutinize the players on the Heat roster, but what about the team's head coach? What does Erik Spoelstra have to do differently in order to get the most out of this current Heat team? We'll let you know on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, join more than 17,000 Heat fans and click that subscribe button on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Have a great show for you today. We're talking about what we want to see from Erik Spoelstra this season. We both put together a list of 3 things that we want to see from Spo. No real instructions, no guidelines to this, so I guess we'll just see where we end up. We also have not shown each other our lists. But David, do you want to start or should I lead off?
No, I got this. I think one of the things I never would have associated with Erik Spoelstra was a kind of lack of direction, or it seemed like maybe there were moments last season where he just wasn't as fully engaged as we've grown accustomed to. I think a lot of Heat fans recognize Erik Spoelstra as one of the greats of the game in terms of his success. And yes, has he relied on incredible players in order to gain that success? Guess what? That's how it works. You don't win with G League level players in the NBA. And Erik Spoelstra has taken advantage of it. It's about managing egos. It's about getting the most out of teams regardless of talent level, etc. And that being the case, I think last year, and I think we both agree on this, was a subpar one, even for Erik Spoelstra. I think there were moments there where he looked a little burnt out. And this season, what I'd like for him, and again, this is something I never would have said, coach with intent, to use the words that Erik Spoelstra loves using in terms of his players. Coach with intent. Seem like you're out there and trying to make the most out of this roster. And maybe this is kind of vague and overgeneralized, but there were moments last year where it seemed like the team was directionless, and I know you were just trying to steer things in the right direction given everything that was happening in that locker room and behind the scenes and trying to incorporate new players. It wasn't easy for anybody. But there were still moments there where Erik Spoelstra, I think, let the team down. And I think he'd be the first to admit it. And I think this summer is going to be an important one for him in terms of recharging, regaining that level of focus, and coming into next season with a renewed sense of purpose and intent. And that's what I'd like to see from Spo, is making sure he gets the most of this roster and to take each practice, each game as purposefully, as seriously as possible, because this team, quite frankly, isn't good enough to take days off nor games off. So they have to go out there, and I'd like to see a team that is more aligned with the motto and mantra of the Miami Heat and go out there and work their butts off every night in order to find a way to win.
If Erik Spoelstra made 2 mistakes last year, I think one that he started the season with was trying to turn that roster into a 5-out offense roster. And that was not going to happen. He tried to lean into a Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero backcourt with Jimmy Butler kind of playing a little bit more point guard, which, based on Jimmy Butler's own comments and the people around Jimmy Butler, he was either happy with or not happy with, depending on the day. And then with Bam, with the 3-point shooting and all of that, it just felt like Bam was getting further and further away from the basket. And that was, I think that might have been the wrong use of the offense. I think he was trying to learn something from the Boston Celtics, the way that they won the championship with 3-point shooting. And by the way, this team does need to figure out how to get up more threes, and they did get up more threes last year. So I think there was some of that idea was right, but trying to turn this into a 5-out offense, I think, wasn't the proper use of the roster. And then the second thing that was the big mistake there was just like the game management stuff, the calling the timeouts when you didn't have one, the not calling timeouts when you probably should call the timeouts, not challenging plays when you probably should in close games. That's stuff that got away from Erik Spoelstra last year, but I am not at all concerned about going forward. You mentioned his need to recharge. I don't think that anybody in the history of the world needed a vacation more than Erik Spoelstra needed a vacation after what he had gone through between the coaching and the drama and the personal life stuff and everything that had been going on the last 2 or 3 years, and just the lack of summers and the Olympics that he had and the finals runs. It's just like, this guy, he just seemed burnt out to me, honestly. And that happens to the best of them. And Erik Spoelstra is quite literally the best of them right now in the league. And so I think with a summer recharged, with a chance to reflect on things, he will be just better. But that's not to say that he can't improve on some things, and that's not to say that we don't want to see certain things change. And I think a big part of this, David, is the fact that the Jimmy Butler era is over. And the way that he coached the Jimmy Butler-led teams cannot be the way that he coaches these teams. And I think he understands that. I think we're already seeing it, the way that he called out Kel'el Ware using the media. I think this is a young roster. The average age of this roster is like 25, 26 years old. That's an inherently different kind of team. You're coaching an inherently different kind of player. And the way you go about coaching that team has to be different. And I think we're already starting to see that from Spo a little bit.
I agree. I think that's part of it. Is he's talked about it, and we're getting closer to media day and training camp and everything else like that. So we're already, at least my internal clock for the NBA season is already starting to work that way, and I'm already trying to figure out exactly what the pulse of this team is going to be. And Erik Spoelstra always says that when it comes to training camp, that every camp is different. It's almost like an organism, and that it has a different vibe every time. And what's the main theme of the camp and everything else like that. And I think he needs to figure out what the pulse of this team is. Like, what is the motivating factor? What is it going to be that unites this group? What is it going to be that motivates them and takes them to that next level? What's going to drive them? And understand how these players were all going to work towards getting better individually and working together as a team. And so I'd like to see that from Spo as well, just being able to kind of understand this group a little better. And I think the age is a big factor in that, because you cannot apply the same methodology that you used in years past with an older team that was gearing for a longer playoff run, that needed to take off, let's say November through March, take those months off knowing that you were going to try to go on a longer playoff run. This isn't that kind of group. You need to be able to play with intent on a daily basis, at the start of the season, the middle of the season, at the end.
I have a specific thing for my first list item here for Erik Spoelstra. Long rotation, short leash. That's what I think this roster has to have. I'm looking at this depth chart, and there's a lot to try to figure out here from that depth chart. Yeah. I think there's 13 guys who I think, 12 to 13 guys who I think need to play, or maybe not need to play, have a case to play. You look at what we project to be the starting five: Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, Andrew Wiggins, Bam Adebayo, Kel'el Ware. You can look at the bench guys: Davion Mitchell, Pelle Larsson, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Haywood Highsmith, Nikola Jovic, Simon Fontecchio, Kasparis Yakachonis. Heck, if Terry Rozier looks better in camp, there's a case to be made that Rozier should get some minutes.
No doubt.
So I'm thinking 12 to 13 guys here have a case to play. I would probably say 10 need to play, maybe 11. And so I think he needs to have a long rotation. I think he should be playing 12 to 13 guys every night. With that said, though, short leash. You make a mistake, you're out. Done. Not maybe for the whole game, but we're mixing things up, right? Like, we have 13 guys who need to play, and if it's not your night, there's only so many minutes to go around. We'll allocate those minutes elsewhere. And I think that's going to be key. I want to see. I think that level of competition plus opportunity is something that can kind of get what you're talking about, having that intention every single day, getting better every single day. I think those two things can go together, where if you're giving those players the opportunity, but also fostering that level of competition where your minutes aren't necessarily guaranteed outside of, obviously, like the starters and the main top 7 or 8 guys. Like, those guys are going to play. You need to have some sort of, coherent rotation every single night. But I want to see him go deep into this bench, at least for the first half of the season.
I think it's a great call. There's a point that I'd like to piggyback off of that, but I think I'll save that for our next segment. But overall, I do like the idea of doing things a little differently. We're talking about the approach on a daily basis, but also when you look at the number of players who can play. And we've made this point before. This might be the deepest team that Erik Spoelstra's ever had. And that's kind of funny because, again, there might not be that top-tier talent on the roster, but you have many playable guys on there that can all offer something different. So, and they all can play at the NBA level, maybe not sustainably, maybe not two-way factors, but at the same time, there's still a lot of players here that can make an impact on the game, and finding that right balance is going to be crucial for Erik Spoelstra.
All right, so we're going to continue on with our list. I have a very specific change that I want to see on offense, too. David has a point that he wants to piggyback on. I'm not sure what he's talking about. We'll find out after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days in the course or off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. You want to be able to play better, play longer. You want to be able to enjoy your time when you're out there with friends and family, and 5-Hour Energy really helps you do that. So if you're looking to boost your golf game a little bit and enjoy those good times with good people and good flavors, well, the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse to go without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order. It cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Before we continue on, we have an announcement that we want to share. We're launching our 25 of 25 series where we're going to rank the top 25 Heat players of the past 25 years. We're going to start doing shows next week about the 25 of 25. But before we do that, we need your help on deciding who those 25 players are. To cast your vote, join the Locked On Heat Insider community, where we are sending the link to the survey every morning this week. So sign up with the link to the Locked On Heat Insider community with the link in the show notes. You do it now so that you can get in before voting ends on Friday night. David, there was a point that you wanted to piggyback on. Was that also the second, related to the second item on your Erik Spoelstra coaching to-do list?
It is. I think you said that the short leash should be out there. I'm not so sure I agree with that. I think you have to find the right balance, and it's not ever easy, but you don't want players, especially a younger roster like this, kind of feeling like that hook is going to be there, kind of always waiting in the wings. And I know it might drive certain players, and maybe that's what you kind of are trying to gear towards. That might be the case, but I also think players kind of thrive on some kind of level of not just comfort, but understanding that they can be allowed to make mistakes and knowing that they'll have the opportunity to make up for those. Not, if I screw up today on a random Tuesday, I might not.
It feels
see
like
the
you're
court
thinking
again.
about somebody specifically. Am I wrong?
No, not necessarily. I would say Niko Jovic. We've seen that from him in the past, where if he's not out there, he just seems, maybe he's more demonstrative than other young players, but it always seems like it gets into his head a little bit, especially when he's missing his shot and he's not being the factor out there that we expect him to be. And he gets the hook, and then he's buried in the depth chart and not really much of a factor until later on, when all of a sudden he reemerges, kind of like the Phoenix from the ashes of his playing time, and winds up becoming a much more complete player. So to me, I do like the idea of going to a deeper, but I just want it to be more random. And that's kind of where I'm looking. Abandon the substitution patterns of the past. Erik Spoelstra is like, oh, we're down a starter. Well, who's the next best player? Should he get the starting minutes? Absolutely not. I'm going to go to the 15th man on my bench because I don't want to screw up my substitution patterns, And maybe he's relaxed on that to a certain degree, but I think that's a big part of it, is just, instead of just sticking to that idea of not playing that guy and finding what works for the second unit. They're all big boys out there, Erik, and they know how to pick up the slack. Put your best players out there. Put yourself in a position to win. We don't see that from any other coach in the league that wants to make that kind of substitution pattern the norm. And to piggyback on your point, I think it's not just about abandoning those patterns, but finding guys that are going to be impactful on a game-to-game basis. Not, oh, Hyman's on a hot streak, I got to go with him, and that means I'm not going to see Haywood Highsmith for a week or 2 or 3 until Hyman pulls a groin or gets hurt or something like that. It's like, you know what? This matchup, Hyman might be effective. Next one, Haywood might be effective, and the Nico or Terry or anybody else on that roster. It seems like you stick to your own guidelines in terms of your substitution patterns, and you wind up getting stuck. And for a franchise that looks so much to the future and loves inviting chaos and bringing about the energy and change that chaos creates, etc., Erik Spoelstra is kind of the exact antithesis of that. Like for all the speak about chaos and that idea, he's very stale sometimes in his substitution patterns, very rigid, maybe I should say, and that's injury, and we might not see that player again for some time. I'd rather him just be a little bit more wild and random so that you can't necessarily plan for it. And I think that's an advantage for a team this deep and also lacking in superstar talent.
So I think what Erik Spoelstra might push back with on the point that you're making is that it's not necessarily like, first of all, untrained eye. No.
Yeah.
But if you were to push back on any specific point, it would be that, hey, like, I'm riding somebody that's on a hot streak during these games or whatever, and then these other players get buried. I think what he would say is he's rewarding people who are performing behind the scenes or showing the level of effort on the court that he needs to see, and that's how he's driving that competition. It's not necessarily what everybody's watching during these games, but it's all the stuff that's happening in the background. That's what I think the pushback would be. And I do think that there's a big part. I always say this about coaching. NBA coaching is like icebergs. We only see the very tip of it. Most of it, we have no idea what's going on. And I think that's what Spo would say. Now, I do think that you and I are saying very similar things where I think you want to see a lot of guys get opportunities every single night, and how you divvy up those minutes is going to be a challenge. Right now, I said short leash because you only have so many minutes to go around. So I'm sorry, Nico, if you're not making shots. Sorry, buddy. Haywood is. Jaime is. Like, somebody else is, and we only have so many minutes to play here, and we got to go out and win this game. And to your point, maybe it's more matchup based, which I think we saw somebody like Mark Dagnall do that a lot with OKC last year, and they went and won the championship. And so maybe it's a combination of all of these things where you're just trying to play 12 to 13 guys. And I think with your idea, David, it's easy to sell that to the team where it's, hey, you're not going to play tonight, but 2 nights from now, that's your time to shine. So don't take it personally. This is just a matchup thing. It's nothing that you did on your own. On that same side, we have seen what Erik Spoelstra has done when he doesn't think that these players are working hard enough behind the scenes, and he calls them out like he did with Kel'el in Las Vegas. And then we saw how Kel'el responded, which was very well. So maybe it's a combination of all these things, but I think you and I both agree, if there's a similarity on our list so far, is that, hey, we got to figure out a way to play a lot of this roster and maybe use that depth to their advantage here. My next thing that I want to talk about is pace. The Jimmy Butler era is over. And so is the era of being one of the slowest freaking teams in the NBA. It's done. I thought it had a purpose with Jimmy Butler. And it did have a purpose. Jimmy Butler liked to play slow. He's the best player on the team. He's the head of the snake. You play through him, through his strengths and through his weaknesses. And part of the Jimmy Butler experience was, yep, we're going to be methodical. We're going to get him into the post. He's going to dribble a bunch of times. He's going to shove people out of the way, and then he's going to get really close to the basket, and then he's going to kick out to a shooter, whether it's Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, Caleb Martin, whoever it was. That's not the roster anymore. But in the Jimmy Butler era, and including last season, which was half of a Jimmy Butler era, the Heat ranked 27th, 29th, 29th, 28th, 29th, and 27th in pace. Yikes. That ain't going to fly anymore. Who on this team wants to play slow? Nobody. Bam does not want to play slow. Bam wants to get up and down. There's 4 more points per game for Bam in a high-paced offense when he's out in transition and doing all the stuff that we know Bam can do in transition. To be even more specific, David, I want them to be top 10 in pace this year. I think 10th is a realistic goal looking at this roster. And I think Erik Spoelstra should be preaching pace, pace, pace. And figuring out a way to get this team higher in pace. Last year, I went back and looked at the numbers. After Jimmy Butler got traded, just as slow as they were before Jimmy Butler got traded. But that was their offense. They had already installed their offense, and it's really hard to change your offense in the middle of a season. So I think going into training camp, I want Erik Spoelstra to be preaching pace and coaching towards a top 10 in pace team. That should help the offense overall. We've talked about this offensive rating, bottom 10 in offense for the last umpteen years. They need to get better there. I think it also would improve with their three-point shooting volume because you have two of the best three-point shooters in the league now, in Tyler Hero and Norm Powell. Those guys should be getting up 23-pointers per game combined, just the two of them. And I'm serious about that number. They should be taking 10 3-pointers each every night because that's the strength of this team.
Yeah.
But the only way to get up that many 3-pointers and not be the Boston Celtics where 80% of your shots are 3-pointers is to get more possessions and increase the pace. So I think this team needs to be top 10 in pace. There's no excuse.
No, it's a great point, a great call out, and I think it would absolutely behoove this roster to point out, I mean, exactly what you said. The fact that this former team, it does not exist anymore. This is a new group, new players, and I think you're absolutely right. You have to find a way to identify the strengths of this team and be able to maximize those. And I think this is a group that's younger, faster, wants to play with pace, and they should be able to lean into that. My only concern with that, because I do agree with you, I think it's 100% supposed to be the focus of this group, and I would not be surprised, again, if along the same lines of what I just mentioned before, that Spo talks about the pace being a main factor or a defining point or quality in this group during training camp. My one concern about that is Kel'el Ware. How does he fit into that? Can he play with pace given what we've seen from him and his let's say endurance or conditioning and things of that sort? Is he going to be willing and able to still be a factor if they're making him run up and down the court frequently? I just think he's the one player who might not benefit from playing with that pace. I don't.
It is tough for centers.
Yes, no doubt.
It is tough for centers, especially centers that don't have like the top 1% elite athletic conditioning like Bam does. And my response to that would be, okay, we'll see. You can't get out there. Sorry, your minutes are going to get cut. It's a challenge to the young player, right? To be in that tip-top shape that this coaching staff is challenging him to be in. And by the way, if you run the floor, you get rewarded. I think if Kel'el Ware were able to play like, and again, it's not even against, it's to your point, hard for 7-footers to play that way all the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a track meet. You just got to get up and down. Like, Cleveland was top 10 in pace last year. They have Jared Allen, Evan Mobley out there all the time. It can be done. Yeah. Right? Indiana played at a high pace. Miles Turner was running up and down the court. It can be done. I think Kel'el Ware can do it. I think he can do it. And if they do that, that's going to open up a ton of lobs, a ton of trailing threes for Kel'el. Like if he's bought into that, he's going to thrive.
The trailing threes, I think, is a big selling point. It's like, you know what? Just get down there, and eventually, if everybody else is pushed ahead and attacking the rim,
you don't have to run the whole court. You can run 60% of it, and
exactly
that'll do.
See those 24-footers.
All right, I have we both have one more coaching adjustment, coaching thing that we want done coming up. I think mine is going to surprise people. I think it's going to surprise you, David. We'll talk about it next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money is well, if you ever wish you could manage your money and that felt a little easier, well, Monarch Money will help you. It absolutely can make that process much easier. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, and it gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If you're looking for a big purchase down the road, Monarch Money will help you. If you've got a goal that you're serious about, this is the way to go about it. It's making sure that you meet those goals and to keep track of your finances. And believe me, you'll start to see with Monarch Money how you can start to cut costs here and there. It's something you might be able to save on just a little bit. And as soon as you make those tweaks and changes, you'll be able to set your goals and reach them. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKDOWNNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKDOWNNBA. You get half off your first year. We'll be right back.
All right. Last parts of our list here, David. What do you got?
This one here is perhaps a little surprising as well. But I think it's time to shake up the coaching staff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you need a new voice there. And as somebody who's as much pro player as I am, it pains me to say this, but I don't know that you're getting the same kind of juice in having somebody like, and I don't want to name anybody in particular. You just have former players on your coaching staff, and I think you might need something a little different. And I don't know if it's maybe hiring a former head coach that might be available now and getting another voice in there. You get a little complacent, I think. And look, again, Spo is used to doing things a certain way, and he's got the right of being. He doesn't feel a hot seat. It doesn't exist. If there's one coach in the NBA now who doesn't have a hot seat, it's Erik Spoelstra. You could probably make a case for Steve Kerr as well. But Spo, like, his job's not in danger. He could screw up royally, and he'll still have a job here. But you just want something different, and you want a different voice, a different flavor, and just having the same guys, especially if they're guys that you coached.
Right.
How is that going to work? They're not going to challenge you, and they've never been coaches in most of these cases. Again, these are former players. They've never been coaches. Even the younger guys that maybe are going through the coaching tree, again, who are they going to challenge? How are they going to feel comfortable offering a differing view when you're going up against a Hall of Fame NBA legend in Erik Spoelstra? And so getting somebody in there who just might be willing to, be a little different, to challenge a guy like that, to be able to put his voice out there and say, oh, you know what? I don't think that's such a good idea. Just something a little different, I think it might be.
Or just to offer a new perspective or a new idea.
Absolutely. It might go a long way towards forcing Spo out of his comfort zone. Again, ironically, this is stuff that Spo talks about all the time, but for somebody who preaches chaos and change as much and looking for that new voice and energy, etc., he's kind of stale, stuff is stuck in his methodology. And so I think it's something that could use a shakeup.
I think there's an obvious pro and there's an obvious con when it comes to the coaching staff, the way that the Heat do it, which is, to your point, guys who are familiar, guys who have come up through the system. We coached them, and now they will coach the next generation. And the obvious pro is alignment. We're all preaching the same thing. We're all marching in the same direction at the same beat of the same drum, and that's hugely important in the NBA. Where you and I have talked to coaching staffs across the NBA, and it is shocking and glaringly obvious when people are not on the same page. And it is the number one thing, I would argue, more than talent, more than anything else, that brings teams down in the NBA, is when teams are not on the same page. From ownership, general management, president of basketball, blah, 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 to the coaching staff, to the players, all of that stuff. Everybody has to be on the same page. And it is the thing that is hugely impressive about the Miami Heat over the years, and impressive about the other most successful organizations in the league. It's impressive about the Thunder. It's impressive about the Warriors. It's been impressive about the Spurs for 3 decades. That's the way it is. So that's the obvious pro. The obvious con is that you end up in the groupthink thing.
Yep.
And everybody's thinking the same way, yes. But on the other side of that, everybody's thinking the same way. And there's not a whole lot of room for new ideas, and they tend to get not even filtered out, but not even existing in the first place, because everybody's already got the same ideas. I don't disagree with you at all, even if it was like a consultant or somebody just to come in and just be like, hey, what about this? I don't think Erik Spoelstra needs to be challenged at this point. I think his singular vision has been proven to be a good one.
Sure.
But just somebody that comes in with some new ideas that have never existed in that building before. And I think that would be interesting. So I'm with you on that. It might be a little bit late in the game, but who knows? In terms of the offseason. But
I don't see why. I mean, just again, a former head coach, somebody that's out there, maybe a college coach that wants to still be active. Hey, I'm just saying, Michael Malone, somebody along those lines, like somebody who's not afraid to kind of say, you know what, I'm waiting on my next coaching opportunity.
You know what's funny is that when guys like Tibbs and these other guys are unemployed, they will often visit other teams and hang around. I remember when I was covering the Warriors, I would see former head coaches just hanging around all the time. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just because they were a little bit more open about that, where if it happens in Miami, they tend to just like rush them out of the practice facility before media comes in, which is entirely possible. I have no idea. I am not reporting anything. Yeah. But it would be kind of cool to just see coaches hang around, especially because I'm sure a lot of these coaches would like to learn a thing or two from Erik Spoelstra and what they've got going on with that program. But we're running out of time here, so I'm going to get to my one. My last thing here. Ditch the zone defense.
Ooh.
Flush it.
Wow.
I'm done. The zone defense, I'm going a little extreme here. I'm not saying ditch it entirely, but you can't rely on it as much as you'd been relying on it in the past. And one of the reasons Miami relied on it so much is because they were so undersized and underskilled on the defensive end. But they've made some changes. They've made some additions to the roster. I don't look at this roster and say, yep, they should be playing a ton of zone. Why should this team be playing a ton of zone? If you're starting with Bam at the 4 and Kel'el at the 5, you're not undersized anymore. And when you've got Davion Mitchell out there at the point of attack, and a guy like Pelle Larsson, who I think is a pretty solid defender, even a guy like you've added in Norm Powell with a 6'11" wingspan, who I think will be a better performing defender in Miami than he has been in the past, where he was a very good defender in Toronto. That is there for him.
Yeah.
Wiggins is an awesome defender.
No doubt.
Haywood Highsmith, you got him on the roster still. There is no reason for this team to play as much zone as it had in the past. I don't look at this roster and say that's a zone defense roster. I look at this roster and I say you should play two different kinds of defenses. You should have a drop when Kel'el Ware is at the 5, and I would love to see them getting back to switching everything with Bam at the 5. When you get into those lineups with Bam at center and Wiggins at the 4 and whatever else you got on the perimeter, you should be switching everything. When Haywood's out there with Bam and Wiggins, you should be switching everything again. And they haven't really been a switch everything defense in a couple of years now, And I think if you toggled between those main defensive schemes, drop with Kel'el, and then you're, at the point of attack with guys like Davion, you're going over those screens, you're funneling guys to Kel'el to the basket, all of these things. If you're playing that way, I think that takes advantage of the talent that you have on the roster. And then when Kel'el's out and Bam's at the center spot, boom, we're switching everything. And I think that's going to keep opposing offenses on their toes. They're going to have to read and react constantly and adjust constantly over the course of regular seasons. I think that could be a huge advantage for them. You got to use zone here and there, fine. But it should not be a base defense the way that it's been, like basically your 2A defense over the last few years.
It just feels like it's still such a positive impact. Like Miami still tends to benefit from this. Like we've seen a number of teams get really discombobulated by the zone, and it just tends to shake up what they can do. We saw it in the play-in tournament. When you throw zone out there, all of a sudden it seems like a team, even with a smoothly running offense, kind of just craps themselves all over the place. They don't know exactly how to play and adjust and things of that sort. And they might not have the offense for it. Now, on the flip side of that, we've also seen a number of teams go, oh, okay, you're going to give us a space? We'll roast you with that. Thank you so much. And they kind of seem to take advantage of it. And to your point, I think that's where you just want to be able to find different variations and find those schemes that you can be more effective with. And I wonder how much of it gets coached. Again, like because practices aren't open, I'd love to be able to see just how much time is spent on any of these base defenses and how much zone gets kind of drilled into it, especially with a roster that's gone through some changes. Exactly.
Oh, in the past, yeah. In the past, it has been a lot. We'll see now.
Exactly. So can they still use the zone effectively if it's not something that's taught and drilled over and over ad nauseum the way it has been in the past? Trying to get these new players on board and getting them to kind of be the best versions of themselves defensively within this kind of context might be very difficult. And so you might lose something that's been a very effective weapon for them in the past. And I don't know if I'm necessarily willing to take that chance, but I see what you're saying in terms of wanting something that's just might be a little different instead of just making it the norm. And
the other part about it is it fuels your offense when you're not like the other defenses I'm talking about. Zone kills your offense. I mean, you have to gang rebound, so everybody's going towards the rim. Right. That slows the pace down. Exactly. And if you're playing drop and you're aggressive at the point of attack, you create turnovers that way. If you're switching everything, you're creating turnovers that way. I want to see more blitzing, more hard hedging, all that kind of stuff that you don't get to do in a zone defense. And by the way, they don't really have, like before in the Jimmy Butler era, you were able to play zone and still create turnovers because Jimmy Butler was so good at reading passing lanes that he would just create those turnovers. You don't have that guy. I mean, you have a couple of guys, but you don't really have that main guy like Jimmy anymore who can create those kinds of turnovers. I think Davion's good at creating turnovers, but more in like that you bumped into me and you lost the ball, like your body stopped, but the ball kept going kind of turnovers. And now I'm picking it up.
Could be a turnover. Who
Right,
knows?
exactly.
Yeah.
So you don't really have those those pass. Ironically enough, the best guy at reading and jumping passing lanes and creating steals might be Tyler Hero.
It is. Absolutely is. It absolutely is.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say you shouldn't be basing your defensive scheme on Tyler Hero in a positive way. Maybe in hiding Tyler Hero, but no, I want to see them. I want to see them switch it up. You can have the zone. It could still be on the menu. It just can't be like it can't be that thing that you're ordering every time you're at the restaurant. It can't be the guacamole. I'm sorry. Like it has to be something else. It has to be dessert, right? It has to be the dessert on the menu. It's like not every night, but every once in a while on special occasion.
Sounds like you had a bad experience with guacamole lately. You want to talk about it? I don't know.
It just feels like every time we go out, we order guacamole, and I'm just like, you know what? Maybe I don't want. Maybe I don't want avocado tonight. Maybe I want the dumplings instead. But I'm losing that battle every time because my wife's pregnant. So that's not a battle I get to have. All right, so that's what we wanted to see from Erik Spoelstra. Let us know in the comments section what you want to see from Erik Spoelstra this season. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.